I've been crying out and praying for a decent action movie to come along and quench the thirst that I have for an outlandish action movie that is as good as the classic action movies such as Die Hard and Assault on Precinct 13 that I grew up watching. Now, The Raid comes along, kicks the door down, and delivers in spades. I'm sure that most people watching this video will already know the plot, but it's basically set in Indonesia, and it's about a SWAT team raiding an apartment building that hasn't been touched by cops for 10 years, and it's run by a drug lord. Once inside, they get trapped and have to fight their way from floor to floor. The Raid is certainly so simple in setup. It's what I would consider to be a high concept thriller in the same way that Speed was, or Die Hard was, or Assault on Precinct 13. These movies have certainly inspired this film, and the director, Gareth Evans, has not been shy in admitting that it's his love letter to those sort of movies when John McTiernan was good, and John Carpenter as well in the 80s and 90s. Well, maybe not John Carpenter in the 90s, but it's certainly a throwback to those sorts of movies, and it is absolutely brilliant. I loved The Raid. Now, don't get me wrong, the script is practically non-existent. While the characters are actually quite likeable, the story itself is so simple it could be written on a napkin, but that's not the point. This is an action film for the sake of action, and that's kind of why I like it. It's so unapologetic in its intentions that I love it because of this. Now, obviously, we know that the film is all going to go to pot once the characters are in this tower block and they're attacked. The way that Gareth Evans stages the action is just so inventive, creative and original that I was sat throughout the whole film with a massive grin on my face. There are certain scenes where shot in the dark which are only lit by muzzle flashes on guns, which is very visually striking. The slow motion, apparently the camera that they needed to film slow motion scenes wasn't available, so all the actors had to just move very, very slowly like this, which I think, watching the movie knowing that it's just guys like walking in slow motion, I think is just really brilliant and fun, and very kind of, you know, down and dirty way of doing it, guerrilla filmmaking, so to speak, and I really like that sort of thing. There is one character, I believe called Rama, who is the main character. He's our way into this film. The film starts with a few shots of him saying goodbye to his pregnant wife and praying. Obviously, Indonesia is a very Islamic country, so they have that kind of culture at the beginning, and it's quite an interesting take on it to see that side of the character, and then him to get into this tower block and literally start taking guys apart, old boy style. It was amazing. It's the first film that I've seen in a long time that during the action scenes, people in the audience, you could hear them going, ooh, ah, shit. Like, you could literally hear people reacting to the film, and it certainly doesn't skimp on the violence. And I have heard Gareth Evans being interviewed where he said that he doesn't want to skimp on the violence or gore, and this film is very violent. Although he doesn't like cruel violence. So while it is very violent and will have you wincing in your seat, it doesn't feel cruel or gratuitous, and that is an approach I really appreciate, because I do find sometimes with films like this, they do become cruel for no really good reason. So I appreciated the fact that Gareth Evans was well aware of this. I have to say, though, that the action itself is unbelievable. The fighting styles, apparently Indonesia has its own martial art, something, the name of which I can't remember, but the fighting styles are very interesting. They utilise their environment, anything they can get their hands on. It's a very adaptable fighting style for different areas, and this means that the fight scenes in the film don't feel repetitive. But there is a scene where the character of Rama takes apart a corridor full of guys with a club and a knife, not unlike in Old Boy, Park Chan-wook's movie, which in this it's just so unbelievably well choreographed that you just left agape while you're watching this movie. There is another scene where one of the main villains, called Mad Dog, fights two of the good guys. And bearing in mind, it's about a 10-minute fight scene, but these guys are literally throwing each other into walls. And the fact that it lasts so long, I just have to congratulate and just, I'm so impressed by the stunt work in this movie and the fight scenes, that these guys really kind of put themselves on the edge for our entertainment, and in doing so we've created a very memorable action movie. I mean, this is the first movie to come along in a long time that is just unapologetically violent and just says, This is a Friday night popcorn film. The fact that it's subtitled, again, I really like the fact that it's set in Indonesia, because we have the very interesting martial arts and fighting styles, but a very kind of Western sensibility in its plot. It looks like a Western movie, the SWAT team and the saying goodbye to his pregnant wife. It's borderline Michael Mann, John Carpenter. I really like that mixture of different filmmaking cultures. Makes a film all the more interesting, and I'm hoping a film like this that is so enjoyable will actually get people to watch more subtitled movies. I hope they watch this and think, actually, I didn't mind reading subtitles, I'm going to go out and watch something else that's subtitled. I really hope that it does help draw people to subtitled and foreign films. But the Raid, like I said, the plot is basically non-existent. The acting isn't, they aren't really given anything to do, the actors aren't given anything to do, but the fight scenes and the action is so good and impressive and just amazingly shot that you will struggle to sit through this film without a huge grin on your face. It is a return to the action movies that I grew up on. It's certainly worth mentioning in the same sentence as Assault on Precinct 13 or Hard Boiled or Die Hard. It's the first great Friday night entertaining action film of this decade, and I highly, highly recommend The Raid.